Good morning, everyone. So my name is Rami Al-Sahar. I'm a master's student here. And today I'll be presenting the work done by our research group about leveraging Twitter data to support transit planning and operations. So currently the approach to gauge rider satisfaction is limited to customer satisfaction surveys. These methods are expensive to conduct, and they also have limited scope, and they only capture the general gist of customers' input. Therefore, a new method is being sought for by using social media platforms, specifically Twitter. And what makes Twitter special is that it has a microblog structure where users write very short, concise posts, which makes extracting meaningful information easier and quicker. These posts are called tweets. They're found in abundance about different topics. They're very cheap to obtain, and also they're posted in real time and are uncensored, which allows us to capture the actual feelings of users in the heat of the moment. Therefore, our primary objective of this work is to produce a platform that can measure customer satisfactions of users from Twitter based on some text analytics tools. Further objectives is to use Twitter to evaluate the impact of service changes on users' experience, as well as detecting in-the-moment incidents based on eyewitness Twitter reports. For, of course, the greater goal of helping transit agencies enhance their transit service planning and operations. So for the rest of this presentation, Calgary Transit will be our main case study, due to having a very strong transit base and a very strong social media presence, with their account being called @Calgary Transit. So for our primary objective, we here in the University of Toronto have developed a user-friendly web-based tool where we can gain insights on users' experiences on Twitter and also their overall network discussion. This is done by combining different analyses shown on to the right, where included semantic, sentiment, social network, and temporal. So I'll quickly run over the workflow of this tool. So the first thing the user would do is create a team. Here, the user is allowed to create as many teams as you want, which allows for different scopes. And at this part, the user will set the team properties. After that, the user will start analysis, where he would select the agency that he would like to investigate. So for our use case, for example, 1 second. So for our use case here, we've selected Calgary Transit. That's their main Twitter account. And then what happens here is that all tweets that mention Calgary Transit would be picked up. And if you want any extra tweets, you would include some hashtags. And these are anything that would pertain to Calgary Transit. For example, maybe their train name or so on. And this way it would capture any tweets that do not mention Calgary Transit as well. Second, the user will input his temporal period that he would like to analyze and also specifying the day of the week and the time of the day. And also we have a special feature called Special Day Insights, where the user will be able to identify major disruption days and information surge days. After that, the user will have to input a customized semantic lexicon, where he would include all categories he would like to study for, with associated terms related to these categories. So it would enable him to label tweets accordingly to these categories. And finally, the user will have to input some social parameters. Now, this is a really neat feature, since it's not really found in customer satisfaction surveys, where it takes advantage of the followership attribute found in Twitter to calculate network attributes and identify communities and their topic of interest. So here only the user will have to decide if he wants to look at the entire network or maybe a subset of this network based on influential users. And these users are accounts that have a followership count that's greater than a user specified threshold. And also he can decide which algorithm he would like to detect communities. So after now obtaining all the tweets and accounts, the user will be prompted for user-driven filtering, where he will be given the top 20 accounts that tweeted in the time period of analysis, with several Twitter attributes shown here. This way, it will allow the user to decide if these accounts are irrelevant or spams. So it can filter off some noise. And also he would be giving the top 20 most frequent terms found in this time period with the 2 most associated terms with this term. And based on that, the user can see if the topics discussed, if there's any topics discussed that's irrelevant, and then he would untick these words that he feels that are relevant, and it will remove any tweets that have these in them. So the whole analysis part can be summarized here by this just one tweet, where the tweet would be picked up by the mention of the agency, for example, here, Calgary Transit, and it would be picked up based on a timestamp, so the temporal period that we have selected. And also the account will be selected based on the network at social parameters that the user has inputted. And then it would separate them into different categories that we would like to study based on the keywords associated with the categories. After that, a sentiment analysis would be conducted where each tweet would get a polarity score, and then we would get an average for all the tweet scores. Then a social network analysis is done, where the following network attributes listed here will be calculated for. And finally, the user will get a report structure, which I'll show right here. So what the user will get is a semantic report showing the frequency distribution of tweets for the different categories he would like to study. And a sentiment report showing the distribution of the tweets, whether they were neutral, negative, positive, and an average sentiment of all the tweets in that period. As well as you get a social network report showing the total degree distribution plot with some of the network attributes calculated here with their values. And finally, a semantic sentiment report showing you the combination of both the semantic results and the sentiment results. So for our second objective, I evaluated the service change, where I investigated service changes that happened in Calgary Transit, where 3 new BRT lines called Max Transit that were introduced on November 2018. This was a big overhaul of their bus network, where 34 routes were changed, and we're gonna call them from now on treatment routes. And other 134 routes were unchanged, and we're gonna call those control routes. We've looked at a period of 2 months before and 2 months after, where we've only captured bus-related tweets. Everything here was manually labeled, whether it was for the semantic categories, which there were 18 of them, and I'll showcasing them in the next slide, or the sentiment results if they were positive, negative, or neutral, just to capture the ground truth behind these results. And finally, for control measures, we've identified any major disruption days and we have removed them. So this is the result of a frequency bar plot, where these are the different 18 attributes I've looked at. So the plain bars are the ones that are before the service change, and the dashed black bars are the ones that are after the service change. And we can see here immediately from the pie chart shown on the right that most of these tweets are negative, and that's a normal occurrence in social media platform, where people usually tweet more negatively and complain about services. And there's a small portion of them that are positive, and they're found mainly in the customer service category, where people tend to praise drivers or their customers' service in general. And the next portion of neutrals, it's also found majorly in the service information availability category, where people tend to ask questions. Therefore, to really evaluate the service change, I decided to look at how it impacted only negative tweets. So this is the zoomed in version of just the negative tweets, where above every attribute, it has a percentage change. And from this, we can identify which service attribute really improved, for example, here, safety and security, and which service change has deteriorated, for example, the on-time performance. So to further investigate this, we looked at the most discussed attribute, which was on-time performance, to see how did this perception of users really compare with the actual performance in the field. And this was done by measuring on-time performance by using APC data and obtained from Calgary Transit and GTFS data based on the time window posted by Calgary Transit of a minute early to 5 minutes late. So here are some of the trend plots. But before I start with this, the tweets were first separated into their control and treatment routes based on what routes that the user mentioned in their tweets for on-time performance complaints. And we can see here for the red line, it shows the actual performance on the field, and the blue line shows the perception of users, and this was calculated based on a average polarity score of the tweets in that time period based on a transit-specific lexicon, sentiment lexicon. And you can see the sample sizes are shown here. And we can notice immediately that the trend of the actual performance and the perception of users for the control routes are trending upward, which is signifying improvement. However, this wasn't significant enough to be attributed to the service change. Furthermore, we can also look at the frequency of negative tweets, and it's decreased here, following the same trends of the previous two lines. Now, if you look at the treatment routes, we can see that both the actual performance on the field and the perception of users have actually deteriorated. And that was significant enough to be attributed to the service change. Furthermore, we can also look at the green line of how the negative frequency of tweets increase and follows the same trends shown in these two lines. So we can conclude here that the perception of users actually match the actual performance on the field for the on-time performance. But further investigation is required for the other categories. For a third objective, this was done by a former colleague of mine, where he looked at detecting in-the-moment incidents from eyewitness Twitter reports. And then he did this by, it was a robust framework where he looked at two aspects, where first he located detected in-the-moment incidents, tweets, combining them, then geocoding these tweets to pinpoint their locations. For example, in this map, you can see here, like this was an in-the-moment tweet, and he pinpointed the location of it. This will help transit agency, for example, get alert notifications of where an incident happened or what it is, and then they can respond to it quicker. As well as you can also better understand the geographical trend shown in this figure here. And then you can pinpoint hotspots, and then from that, transit planners can make informed decisions about. So to conclude, we have shown Twitter can be a viable option to complement surveys. And we have developed a platform to do that. And we have showcased different capabilities of using it. I would like to acknowledge our research partners, specifically Calgary Transit and QTRIC and NSERC. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rami. That was very interesting. I know there was a lot of effort to try to develop the transit-specific lexicon, and it's what you mentioned about the social followership, sort of the influencers. That's all very interesting.